Sean O'Malley is getting his second crack at Merab Dvalishvili in a couple of weeks at UFC 316, and a lot of people seem to be completely counting him out. Merab is a 3-1 betting favorite. Fans seem to think this is going to be just a dominant decision for Merab, but I actually think that Sean O'Malley has a better chance than people are giving him credit for, and I'm going to be going through and doing a full breakdown of this matchup, and then giving my winner pick and prediction at the end. Let me know your thoughts down below. Drop your pick if you enjoy. Hit the like button, subscribe. But let's just dive right into the breakdown. And obviously, it's a super interesting matchup because we've seen this fight before. This was Sean O'Malley's most recent fight. Merab obviously had the Umar title defense in between. But going back and watching the first fight, there were two kind of main things that stood out to me. The first one was just Merab's ability to rack up control time. And then the second one that I'll dive into in a little bit was Sean O'Malley actually winning 2 of the last 3 rounds on 2 of the judges' scorecards. So starting off here with Merab's control time, everyone knows that Merab wants to go out there and wrestle, but he's more of like a high volume wrestler. He's going to push a crazy pace, but he's not someone who's known for landing a takedown and then being able to hold someone down, landing a ton of ground and pound, threatening with submissions. He's just not like an Aljamain Sterling type of wrestler, right? They train together, they're like best friends, but their grappling styles are very, very different. He pretty much did all of those things against Sean O'Malley, where he racked up 10 minutes of control time. He landed 45 ground strikes. He even jumped for a ghillie at one point, I think in the first or the second round. So his kind of success was a lot more than we've seen in some of his other matchups. It was his most control time in a fight since Terrion Ware in 2018. Now, obviously, all of his fights have not been, 25 minutes, so that's a factor. But you look at his fight with Petr Yan, Umar, like he was not controlling those guys to the same extent that he was against Sean O'Malley. And then it was his most ground strikes since his Marlon Moraes fight. So he, set some highs in some of those areas. And I just thought it was interesting because heading into that fight, it was like, all right, Merab's going to push the pace. He's going to shoot a ton of takedowns. O'Malley's going to have a lot of potential options to try to counter the takedowns. And it just wasn't really quite there because he was getting held down more than I had, kind of expected going into that matchup. And then the second big thing that stood out, like I mentioned, was Sean O'Malley actually winning 2 of the last 3 rounds. So Merab did lose round 3 and round 5 on 2 of the 3 scorecards. Now, some of those rounds were competitive. Like, I don't think fans agree that, that was a clear 48-47 for Merab. I think some people scored at 49-46. Others potentially scored at 50-45. I actually agree with giving Sean O'Malley round 3 and round 5. For me, round 5 is a lock. I know some people gave that round to Merab. I don't know how you do that when Merab was visibly hurt on the feet to the body by Sean O'Malley. And then round 3, I still think Sean O'Malley just landed, the more effective shots, even though Merab did have some success in the grappling. So I do agree with those scorecards, but when you look at all of Merab's other high-level fights, dudes are just not winning those later rounds against him. Against Umar Nurmagomedov, Merab dropped the first 2 rounds, won rounds 3, 4, and 5. Henry Cejudo, he dropped the first one, he won 2 and 3. Jose Aldo, he dropped the first round, he won 2 and 3. Petr Yan, just completely cleared it here, won all 5 rounds. But it is very, very rare to see Merab actually lose in some of those later rounds. And if you were going into this matchup, you'd think, all right, maybe O'Malley able to stuff the takedowns early on, land some things, maybe round 1, round 2, or it's probably his best rounds to win. And then he probably, fades towards the end and Merab pulls away. It just did not play out that way. Also, just some overall takeaways from the fight. It was just a weird matchup when we look at some of the fouls, some of the officiating. You start off within the first 10-15 seconds with Merab freaking out because Tim Welch was trying to get into his head with his coaching. He was trying to do the same thing he was doing in the Aljamain Sterling fight. So Merab is pointing, running around the cage, yelling. Herb Dean has to get that under control, and then Tim Welch ends up getting warned by Herb Dean, which still is a little bit confusing because I don't know if it's actually against the rules. I believe it was excessive coaching, but I don't even know if that would qualify. And then you have Sean O'Malley getting warned for holding Merab's glove. You have Merab getting reprimanded for kissing Sean O'Malley. And then Merab stands up thinking the round's over. O'Malley then hits him when he's not looking. Fair play. The time was still there. You also have Merab landing an illegal grounded knee. And then Herb Dean, honestly, just an overall horrific reffing performance from Herb Dean. That might be the biggest takeaway from that fight. You're getting into the 4th and 5th round. Merab has some control time. He's landing shots. He's staying active. Herb is just consistently telling him to work, even though he is. Then in round 5, they're on the feet, kind of picking at each other. Herb once again is telling them to work. You need to work. Like, they're literally on the feet having a fight, and Herb Dean is throwing a tantrum for no reason. I mean, even the commentary team was just dumping on him for it. It was very, very weird. But overall, just kind of a lot of weird situations in that matchup. It'll be interesting to see if it's kind of a cleaner fight heading into the second one. I think the circumstances of this, second matchup here are pretty interesting because Sean O'Malley has not had to fight since that original Merab matchup. It's not shocking for someone to, get a rematch. I don't think this is a super deserved title shot, if I'm being honest, but it's not crazy. What is weird is for the loser to not have to fight, get the rematch, but the champion actually has to defend the title. Like, that is something that you don't see a ton. And so, with this current layout, Sean O'Malley's had the opportunity to just focus, recover, and really just lock in on training for Merab, right? Like, that's the guy he should have been focusing in this entire time. And at this point, it's pretty much like 2 years, right? Because you have the Cheeto fight, then he was preparing for Merab. He loses to Merab, but he doesn't have to train for anyone else. He's still probably locked in on Merab and potentially getting that title back. And I do trust, I think O'Malley's very smart. I think Tim Welch is very smart. I do trust both of those guys to make, some real improvements with all that time off, being able to just focus in on Merab. And then for Merab, he is coming off like a fairly tough competitive fight against Umar Nurmagomedov in January. Now, I know he's someone who kind of thrives on being super active, so maybe that's not like a negative for him, but he's a dude who trains insanely hard. I think he had staph infection, was sick going into that Umar matchup. It seems pretty clear that he, probably overtrains getting ready for fights. And he's 34 years old, which isn't super old, but it is getting up there in some of the lighter weight classes. With his training style, it seems like he's injured a fair amount. I don't know if he's a guy who's going to age super gracefully. So I think a lot of these things are kind of going in the favor of Sean O'Malley when we're just looking at the circumstances here. And then looking back at that first matchup, I do think Merab's game plan was super, super smart. He was not reckless heading into this fight. I think if you were going to paint the picture for Sean O'Malley winning, you would say, all right, Merab is going to have to shoot a million times. Eventually, Sean O'Malley can catch him with something, whether it's a knee, an uppercut, right? Like, I didn't think Merab was going to be able to go in there and shoot 50 times like he did against Petr Yan and not get caught once. He didn't really have to, right? You look at some of his other matchups, he had 49 takedown attempts against Petr Yan, 11 against Henry Cejudo in a 3-round fight, 30 takedown attempts against Umar Nurmagomedov, only 15 against Sean O'Malley. Now, I say only 15. That's still a lot, but for Merab, that's a pretty, limited number for a 5-round fight. And I think, he recognized the danger coming at him, whether it's the knees, the front kicks, the uppercuts, but he was very efficient with those takedowns where he landed 40% of them. That's more than we've seen in some of his other matchups. And then was still able to rack up 2 minutes of control time on those 6 total takedowns. And then on the feet, he stayed relatively safe. He was like all the way out, kind of, out of O'Malley's range, or he was pressuring him, charging in to land those takedowns. In my opinion, the biggest kind of factor in O'Malley's favor is just the finishing upside in this fight. It's something that I think is kind of under-discussed, but in matchups where one guy just has the massive edge with way more finishing upside, like, that is a significant advantage in a fight. With Sean O'Malley, I think you can see the path to him winning by knockout or by decision. For Merab, I think the path is pretty much locked into decision, where it would be shocking to see him knock out Sean O'Malley. It would be pretty surprising to see him submit him. And maybe some people don't think that Sean O'Malley can win by decision. I kind of just disagree. He was 1 round away last time. It's not shocking to me that in that fight, he could have landed one more big strike and dropped Merab in round 1, 2, or 4. And all of a sudden, he's potentially winning 3 rounds and winning a decision. I think it's kind of a similar situation to the Bilal JDM fight, where you might have thought Bilal was the overall better fighter. He can go in there, win a decision, but it would have been shocking to see him finish JDM. And JDM had the upside to win a decision, but he also had that finishing upside in a way that Bilal Muhammad did not. So to overcome that gap in the finishing ability, you do just have to be such a good fighter. You have to be so clean to kind of overcome the potential lacking of big moments. And I do think Merab is that good. He's been able to overcome that pretty much his entire career. Who has more finishing upside, him or Petr Yan? I'd say Petr Yan. I think you could make the case that Umar has more finishing upside, but Merab is still able to go in there and win these fights. But O'Malley does just have the ability to end the fight at any point or just stamp those rounds, right? Like Merab, for him to win a round, he's going to have to rack up control time, land some ground and pound. Sean O'Malley can be losing a round for 4 minutes and 59 seconds, and he just needs one shot to drop Merab to potentially sway those rounds. Because Merab isn't, going to be getting a huge lead in these rounds, he might be winning, but he's probably not going to have those signature moments to really stamp rounds, without just kind of, winning them based on control or just a little bit of damage. And so I want to make it clear, like maybe this has seemed very pro O'Malley. I am very aware of how good Merab Dvalishvili is. 12-fight win streak, his last 5 being a win streak against Umar Nurmagomedov, Sean O'Malley, Henry Cejudo, Petr Yan, Jose Aldo. Like, you're talking about legends. You're talking about like the new wave with Umar. I guess you could kind of put Sean O'Malley in there. Like, this has been an insane run for Merab. He is in the mix for being the greatest bantamweight of all time. I think like his pre-title run, even though this is going to be his second title defense, like picking up wins against Petr Yan, Henry Cejudo, Jose Aldo before you even get to the title is an insanely impressive strength of schedule. I think he has the best cardio in MMA history, and I think you could easily see the path where this is just a really clear, dominant decision win. If he didn't get hurt to the body in the 5th round of that first fight, it's very possible this is like 4-1, with some people arguing it could be a 5-0, with round 3 kind of being up in the air. But I also think there are a lot of factors going in the favor of Sean O'Malley. O'Malley getting pretty much like an 8-month layoff to just solely focus on beating Merab, I do think is significant. We saw how good he looked in the matchups against Aljamain Sterling and Chito Vera. In both those fights, he had extended layoffs going into, that title opportunity against Aljo and then the defense against Chito. And I think those are probably his 2 best performances of his career. And then I also think just more often than not, when someone fights a wrestler and then they get to rematch them, I think they typically tend to defend better in the second matchup. In my opinion, it's easier to improve your takedown defense than it is to improve your offensive wrestling, because when you're defending takedowns, you're just like trying to stop someone from doing something to you. You're really like putting in all the effort as the guy trying to land the takedowns. And so if I had to predict, like, do I think he does better or worse dealing with Merab's wrestling, I would bet on him doing better in this second matchup. Some of the fights that come to mind as examples of that would be like the Leon Edwards second fight into the third one, where Usman actually landed a similar number of takedowns, but that second fight, he racked up 10 minutes of control time. The third one, only 5 minutes. You think about a Bellator title fight between Vadim Nemkov and Corey Anderson. Corey Anderson was dominating in the wrestling department. The fight ended up being a no contest because he cut Nemkov open on a headbutt, but I think it was through 2 or 3 rounds. He was just controlling Nemkov. Nemkov could not deal with the wrestling. They rematched, a few months, maybe a year and a half later or half a year later, and Nemkov all of a sudden stuffed everything, and Corey Anderson just had no answers because he could not take him down. Now, there are other examples. You look at Grasso, Shevchenko, where Shevchenko had some success in the grappling in the first and second fights and then was just so dominant in the third. But I think more often than not, it does go in the favor of, the guy trying to defend when you do have a second fight against someone. Also, we look at the age here. O'Malley, 30 years old, Merab, 34. I think Merab has more wear and tear on the body. I think, that kind of favors O'Malley, where he's probably still ascending. Not sure if Merab is still actively getting better. Obviously, where he's at now is still amazing, but, something I will throw out there. And then I do know that it's a big if, but if Sean O'Malley is able to kind of limit Merab, just holding him down, I'm not saying he's not going to get taken down. I do think he's going to get taken down. But if he can be like Umar and Petr Yan and scramble and get back to the feet, controlling is not Merab's strength, that really, really opens things up for Sean O'Malley here, where either he's just going to have straight up more time to work on the feet, he's going to use less energy, right? Because he's much more comfortable in a 5-round striking fight than a 5-round grappling matchup. And then also, it could force Merab to take more shots and more reckless shots, which is going to give Sean O'Malley more opportunities to counter. This was a fight that was 48-47 on 2 scorecards. In the first one, I think the other judge had it 50-45, but I agree with the 48-47. And so Merab is a huge underdog in a fight that was pretty competitive. I know Sean O'Malley says he won. You have Tim Welch complaining about the lighting. There have been some delusional statements coming out of that camp. I do not think Sean O'Malley won that first fight, but I do think he won 2 rounds, and it's not crazy to see with some adjustments, him having that time off, that this could be a fight that flips in favor of Sean O'Malley. So I'm actually going to be picking the big underdog here in O'Malley to pull off the upset. I'm going to go with a round 3 knockout win, but I also do think he's live for a decision win. That might sound crazy going up against a guy like Merab and his cardio, but he was 1 round away last time. I think he finds one more shot on the feet in one of those first couple of rounds. I think he could sway around. So I think it's going to be competitive. Like I said, I could see a path where Merab just goes in there, gets his wrestling going early. Maybe O'Malley doesn't find, a shot that hurts him in the later rounds, and he ends up just cruising to a decision. But I think Sean O'Malley is going to look better than some people are thinking. I don't think he deserves this opportunity, but I think the fact that he hasn't had to fight in a number 1 contender matchup, he's been able to lock in on this one specific matchup, I think that is going to sway this fight in the favor of Sean O'Malley. I'm going with round 3 knockout, but let me hear your thoughts down below. Do you agree, disagree? Let me hear your reasoning. Drop your predictions in the comment section. But thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.